The royal palace stood tall, glowing with the light of the twin suns, its many towers piercing the skies like the claws of a mighty beast. The grand hallways were filled with the sounds of distant laughter and music. But one person did not feel the joy of the celebrations. Princess Alicia, a beautiful alien woman with shimmering silver skin and piercing violet eyes, hurried through the palace, her heart racing. She had just learned something shocking. Her husband, Prince Varian, the ruler of their people, had turned against her. His plan was simple yet deadly. He wanted her dead. She had been summoned to a private meeting where her life would be taken. But who could have warned her in time? She had trusted him with everything, her heart, her loyalty, her very life. How could he betray her so easily as she rushed down a quiet hallway? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sharp voice of a human guard. "Stop," the guard said, stepping into her path. Alicia stopped in her tracks, looking up at the man before her. He was tall, his face stern, his uniform pristine. He was a human, part of the royal guard. Yet he seemed different from the others. There was something in his eyes that made her feel as though he saw more than just the surface. The guard stood, firm, blocking her way to the door she was about to enter. "Your husband wants you dead," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "Don't enter that room." The princess blinked in confusion, her thoughts swirling. What was this human guard saying? Why would he speak against the prince? Was he lying? Did he have a hidden agenda? But the guard's words made her pause. There was an undeniable sincerity in his tone, something that made her doubt her own understanding of the situation. Alicia took a step back, her mind racing. She had heard rumors about political unrest in the palace, but she never imagined that it would reach her, let alone be aimed at her. She had always believed that her marriage to Prince Varian was one of love and trust. Now, standing before this human, it felt like the world was falling apart. "Why are you stopping me?" Alicia asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you know? Why would my husband want to kill me?" The guard's expression softened slightly, but he did not move. "I can't tell you everything, but I can help you," he said quietly. "I've seen the prince's plans. He's been plotting against you for a long time. You're in danger, and I can't let you go in there." For a long moment, Alicia stood, frozen. Her mind refused to accept the reality of what the guard was saying. Varian, the prince she had married, the one who had promised to protect her and their people, wanted her dead. She had always believed that she was safe in his arms. But now that safety felt like a lie, she looked at the guard again. His uniform marked him as a member of the royal guard, but his eyes told a different story. There was a weight in his gaze, as though he carried the knowledge of things she could not yet understand. "I don't know what to believe," Alicia admitted, her voice a whisper. "I've trusted him my whole life. Why would he do this? Why would he betray me?" The guard stepped forward, his voice low and firm. "Sometimes, even the ones we trust most turn against us. I'm telling you this because I believe you're better off not going in that room. If you do, it may be the last thing you ever do." The words hit her like a shock. She was no longer sure of anything. The palace, which had once been a place of comfort and safety, now felt like a prison. The walls, the floors, the grand halls, all of it seemed to close in on her. Where could she go if not here? Who could she trust if not her husband? The world she had known was crumbling around her, and she had no idea where to turn. "I need to think," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know what to do." The guard nodded slowly, his expression hard to read. "I understand, but whatever you decide, don't go in there. I'll be here to help if you need it." For a moment, Alicia simply stood there, unsure of what to do. She glanced back at the door, wondering what awaited her behind it. Was her husband really planning her death? Or was this just a trick, a lie designed to confuse her? There were too many questions and too few answers. Finally, with a deep breath, Alicia turned away from the door. She could not trust her instincts alone, not now, not when her life was at stake. The palace felt like a maze, and she was lost in it. But one thing was clear. She could no longer trust the man who had once been her everything. She had to find the truth before it was too late. Alicia walked slowly, her steps heavy, as the human guard followed her through the quiet corridors of the palace. The bright lights above flickered occasionally, casting long shadows on the marble floors. She could still hear the guard's warning in her mind. "Your husband wants you dead. Don't enter that room." It echoed in her ears, growing louder with each step she took. But she had no choice but to move forward. The room, the one where she had been summoned by her husband, was just ahead. And yet, now, she was unsure whether she should go or run. The palace, once a place of joy and grandeur, now felt cold and unwelcoming. Alicia couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in on her. The guards, the servants, the diplomats, all of them had always respected her. Now, they seemed like strangers. Was it all a lie? Had she been blind to the truth for so long? Turning to the guard, she hesitated for a moment before speaking. "How do you know all this?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with uncertainty. "How do you know my husband is planning to kill me?" The guard, who had been walking behind her, stopped and turned to face her. His face was stern, his expression unreadable. "I've seen it with my own eyes," he said quietly. "I've been a soldier in the prince's army for many years. I know how these things work." Alicia felt a chill run down her spine. A soldier in the prince's army. He had been close to the heart of the palace, and yet he had turned his back on the very man who once trusted him. Why, and more importantly, why was he helping her now? "You're risking your life by helping me," she said, her voice shaking. "Why are you doing this?" The guard's eyes softened for a moment, and he looked away. "Because I can't stand by and watch someone innocent die," he replied. "The prince, your husband, he's changed. He's been manipulated by those who want to destroy the peace between humans and aliens. He believes that the alliance between your people and humans is weak, and if he kills you, the peace will crumble." Alicia was silent, trying to process the words the guard had spoken. Could it really be true? Had her husband been influenced by others, pushing him to take such a dangerous step? Was she truly just a pawn in someone else's game? She thought back to the early days of her marriage. The prince had been kind, attentive, and always by her side. They had shared dreams of building a future together, one where humans and aliens could live in harmony. It was a vision they had built together, something they both believed in. But now, it seemed that the prince's ambition had twisted his heart, leading him down a dark path. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Alicia whispered. "My whole life. It's all been turned upside down in a matter of hours." The guard's expression softened as he stepped closer to her. "I understand, but right now, you need to focus on staying alive. If you don't trust me, that's fine. But you must trust that you're in danger, and the prince will stop at nothing to see you dead." Alicia looked into the guard's eyes, searching for any hint of deceit, but she found none. There was something in his gaze that made her believe him. The guard wasn't just a soldier following orders. He was someone who had seen the dark side of power, and now he had chosen to help her. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know where to go. I don't know who to trust." The guard thought for a moment, his eyes scanning the hallways around them. "We need to get out of the palace. It's the only place. You're in immediate danger. Once we're out, we can figure out what to do next. But you can't stay here. Not with the prince's men watching every move you make." Alicia nodded, still feeling lost but knowing that the guard was right. Her husband was no longer the man she had married. He had become someone else, someone dangerous. And the palace, which had once been her home, was now a prison. She followed the guard as he led her through the winding corridors, each step taking her further from the place she had once felt safe. The sounds of the palace seemed to fade away as they moved deeper into the shadows. Alicia's mind raced. She thought about the prince, about their marriage, about the future that now seemed uncertain. "What will happen to him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The guard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced back at her, his face hardening. "It's not about him right now. It's about you. You have to survive. That's all that matters." The princess felt a lump in her throat. She had always believed in the goodness of people, in the idea that love could overcome anything. But now, her world felt fractured, and the guard's words rang true. She had to focus on herself. If she didn't, everything she had worked for, her life, her people, her future, could be lost. As they approached a hidden exit, Alicia glanced one last time at the grand halls of the palace. The life she had known was gone. Now, all that remained was uncertainty and the unknown path ahead. The door to the outside world opened, and the cool air of the night hit her face. Alicia stepped forward, her heart heavy but determined. She had made her choice. There was no turning back now. Alicia stepped into the cool night air, her mind still racing from everything that had happened. The palace was behind her now, a distant silhouette against the stars. But the danger was still very real. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Her life had been turned upside down, and now all she could do was follow the human guard who had saved her life. The streets of the city, normally busy with the hum of alien and human traders, were eerily quiet. It felt as though the entire city was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Alicia tried to push the fear away, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. The guard walked beside her, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, alert for any sign of trouble. They passed through a series of narrow alleys, the kind of places where no one would think to look for a royal princess. Alicia was used to the luxury of her life in the palace's bright halls, grand rooms, and the sound of soft music in the air. But now, she was in a completely different world. The alleyways were dark and smelled of oil and metal, not the flowers and incense she was used to. It was a stark reminder of how much had changed in such a short time. "Where are we going?" Alicia asked, breaking the silence. Her voice felt small in the vastness of the night, but she needed to know. She needed to feel some sense of control over her life again. The guard didn't answer immediately. His face remained calm, his expression unreadable. "Somewhere safe," he said finally. "We'll get you out of the city. I have contacts who can help." Alicia glanced at him, trying to read his face. "You have contacts? Who are they?" "They're humans who aren't part of the prince's army," the guard explained, his voice low. "People who can help protect you while we figure out what's going on with the prince." The idea of trusting more humans made her uneasy. After all, it was a human who had just helped her escape. How could she know that these other humans weren't loyal to the prince as well? But at this moment, she had little choice. Her options were limited, and the guard had already shown that he was trustworthy. He had risked his own life to protect her, and she had to believe that he was still on her side. As they walked through the city's dark streets, Alicia's mind wandered back to the prince, Varian, her husband. How could he have changed so much? She remembered the days before their marriage, when they had talked about their dreams for the future, a future where humans and aliens could live in peace. But now, that dream seemed shattered. Was he really planning to kill her? How had he been manipulated into doing such a thing? Her thoughts were interrupted when the guard suddenly stopped. "We need to move quickly," he said, looking over his shoulder. "Someone's coming." Alicia felt her heart skip a beat. She didn't know if it was the prince's soldiers or just a group of strangers. But she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't afford to be caught. The guard motioned for her to follow him into another alleyway, and they moved swiftly, their footsteps barely making a sound on the hard ground. They reached a small, rundown building at the end of the alley. The guard knocked twice on the door, and a moment later, it opened to reveal a tall, older man. His features were rugged, his clothes simple but practical. His eyes flicked to Alicia, then back to the guard. "Is she the one?" the man asked, his voice rough. "Yes," the guard replied. "We need to get her out of here." The man nodded and stepped aside, allowing them to enter. Inside, the building was dimly lit, with a few worn-out chairs and a table in the center of the room. There were no windows, just the quiet sound of distant voices outside. Alicia felt the weight of her situation settle over her. She was no longer in the safety of the palace. She was in the hands of strangers. and the fear that had been building inside her started to grow once more. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you want with me?" The older man gave a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We want to help you," he said. "We've been watching the prince for a long time. We know he's up to something, and we know you're in danger. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen." Alicia took a deep breath. She didn't know if she could trust this man, but she had no other choice. She had to survive. The guard stepped forward. "We're taking her to a safe location. She'll be safe there until we can figure out what to do next." Alicia nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. She wasn't alone anymore. She was with people who were willing to fight for her safety. It was a small comfort in a world that had turned upside down. As they moved deeper into the building, Alicia glanced at the guard. His face was calm, but she could see the tension in his posture. He was just as uncertain as she was about what would happen next. The prince was a powerful man, and if he wanted her dead, he wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. Alicia took another deep breath. She didn't know what the future held, but she had made a choice. She had chosen to trust the guard, to trust these strangers who were risking everything to help her. And in that moment, as they walked into the unknown, she realized that she was no longer the princess locked away in a palace. She was someone different now, someone who would fight for her own life. The small, dimly lit room was a far cry from the grand halls of the palace. It felt cold, its walls bare, with only the sound of footsteps echoing through the air. Alicia stood in the center of the room, her mind swirling with confusion. She had just entered the safe house, but it didn't feel safe. It felt like she was in hiding, like a fugitive. The princess had never imagined a life like this, always protected, always secure. But now, she was alone, with only the human guard to rely on. She glanced around at the few people gathered in the room. They were all humans, their faces hard and serious, as if they had been expecting her arrival for a long time. The older man who had opened the door to her was sitting at a table in the corner, looking at a map of the city. There was a woman standing near the window, keeping watch, her eyes scanning the streets outside. The guard, who had brought her here, stood by the door, his eyes still alert. Alicia could see the tension in his posture. It was clear that they were all waiting for something to happen, something they couldn't control. "Is this really the only place we can hide?" Alicia asked, her voice trembling slightly. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "Is there nowhere else? The prince's men will be looking for me. They'll find me here." The guard turned to her, his expression unreadable. "This is one of the safest places we could get to on short notice. It's hidden, off the prince's radar. No one knows about it, not even the palace guards. But how do you know I'll be safe here?" She pressed, stepping closer to him. "I'm a princess. They'll be looking for me everywhere. I don't belong here. I'm not like you." The guard met her gaze, his face softening for a moment. "It doesn't matter who you are," he said. "You're here because you're in danger, and we'll protect you. We've all been through our own battles. We fight for what's right, not just for ourselves, but for the peace we believe in." Alicia nodded slowly, taking in his words. She could feel her doubts slowly fading, replaced by a sense of urgency. She was no longer just a princess in a palace. She was a person who needed to survive, and if these people were willing to fight for her, then maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. The older man at the table looked up, his eyes narrowing. "The prince isn't the only threat we have to worry about," he said, his voice gruff. "There are others in the palace who want her gone. We can't just hide here forever. We need to make a plan to take down those who are after her." Alicia turned to the man, a sense of unease creeping into her thoughts. "What do you mean? Who else is involved?" The man leaned forward, his hands resting on the map. "The prince is being used as a pawn. There's a faction within the palace that wants to break the alliance between humans and aliens. They see you as the key to that alliance, and if they can remove you, the peace talks will fail. The prince is just their tool, but we've seen the signs. They've been making moves behind the scenes, trying to get rid of anyone who might stand in their way. A shiver ran through Alicia as she processed his words. So, they want to kill me. To stop the peace? She asked softly, her mind struggling to understand it all. The older man nodded. Exactly. Your husband may not have been the one to make the first move, but now he's involved. The people behind him, the ones who are pulling the strings, they're the ones we need to stop. Alicia felt a wave of exhaustion crash over her. She had never imagined her life would come to this. She had been so sure of everything: her marriage, her role as a leader, her place in the palace. But now, everything felt so uncertain, and she was being forced to trust strangers, people she barely knew. How do we stop them? Alicia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How can I possibly fight against them when I don't even know who they are? The guard stepped forward, his tone firm. We can't take them down without help, but we've already started gathering information. We've got allies in the city, humans who've been watching the prince's every move. They're ready to strike when we are, but we need to be careful. We don't want to draw too much attention to ourselves. Alicia nodded slowly. So, we wait? For now, yes, the guard replied. But when the time is right, we move. We have to strike before they can do any more damage. We'll expose the traitors and stop them from tearing everything apart. Alicia took a deep breath. She had never been in a situation like this before. In the palace, she had always been in control. She had been surrounded by servants, guards, and advisors, each one willing to protect her. But now, all she had was the human guard and a few strangers she barely knew. She didn't know if she could trust them completely, but she had no other choice. She had to trust that they wanted the same thing she did to survive and protect the future of the Alliance. Okay, Alicia said, her voice steady. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't let them win. The guard gave her a nod of approval. That's the spirit. We'll need you to be strong. The road ahead won't be easy, but I believe we can do this together. Alicia stood tall, the weight of the situation still heavy on her shoulders, but for the first time in hours, she felt a small spark of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a chance, and she was going to take it. The safe house was quiet. The walls, once comforting, now felt cold and unwelcoming. Alicia had spent hours trying to rest, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw her husband's face, Prince Varian, the man she had married with hope and love. Now, that same face seemed like a mask, hiding the darkness within. She couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal. How had things gone so wrong? How had he become someone she couldn't trust? She had loved him, believed in him. Now, he was the reason she had to hide, the reason she was no longer a princess, but a fugitive. The guard had been the one to pull her from the palace, to bring her to safety, and yet even he was not without his own doubts. They had spoken little since they arrived at the safe house, each caught in their own thoughts. But the tension in the air was thick, like a storm waiting to break. Alicia stood by the window, looking out at the dark streets. It was hard to believe that not so long ago, she had walked these streets with the prince by her side, with the city welcoming her as their future queen. Now, she was a symbol of everything that was wrong, a threat to the very peace she had once believed in. The sound of footsteps behind her startled her, and she turned to find the guard standing in the doorway, his face tense, eyes narrowed. He looked like a man who had seen too much, a man who had lived through battles that left scars invisible to most. Are you okay? The guard asked quietly, his voice soft but strong. Alicia sighed, her shoulders slumping. I don't know, she replied. I can't stop thinking about him. I keep asking myself if I missed something, if there was a sign that could have warned me. But I didn't see it. How did he change so quickly? The guard stepped closer, his presence calming. It's not your fault, he said. People change. Sometimes for reasons we can't see, and sometimes they're pushed into making choices they don't want to make. But what matters now is that you're alive. You have a chance to make a difference. Alicia met his eyes, searching for any hint of reassurance, but there was none. Instead, there was just honesty. He wasn't offering false comfort. He was telling her the truth that she was no longer in control of her life. But she could still control what came next. I can't just run forever, she said, turning away from the window. I can't hide from him forever. I need to know what's really going on. I need to know who is pulling the strings. Who else is involved in this plot? The guard hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I know a few people who can help with that. There are humans and aliens who've been watching the prince's movements. They've seen the changes, the shifts in power. We've been gathering information. But it's dangerous. There are people who won't hesitate to kill anyone who stands in their way. Elysia felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. But how do we even begin to stop them? How do we find these people? I don't even know where to start. We start by being patient, the guard replied. We can't act rashly. We need to find the right time, the right moment. If we rush into this without knowing everything, we could make things worse. Elysia looked down at her hands, still trembling from the chaos of the last few hours. I feel so helpless, she admitted. I've spent my whole life being sheltered, protected. Now I don't know who I am anymore. You're still the same person, the guard said gently. You're just in a different situation. A dangerous one. Yes, but you have the strength to face it. You've always had it, you just have to remember it. His words gave her a small measure of comfort, but they didn't change the reality of her situation. The prince was coming for her, and if the guards weren't already after her, they would be soon. She could feel the walls closing in. What if it's too late? Elysia whispered. What if we wait too long, and by the time we act, it's already over? The guard shook his head. It's never too late as long as you're alive. We'll find a way to stop them, I promise. She looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. She had no reason to doubt him. He had already done so much for her. But the fear was still there, gnawing at her every step. A loud knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Elysia jumped, her heart pounding. The guard motioned for her to stay quiet and walked toward the door, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon. He opened the door slowly, revealing a figure standing in the shadows. It was a woman, dressed in simple clothes, her face hidden under a hood. She looked over her shoulder quickly before stepping inside, closing the door behind her. Is she here? The woman asked, her voice sharp and low. The guard nodded, stepping aside to allow the woman in. Elysia felt a surge of anxiety, her senses on high alert. Who was this person? What did she want? The woman pulled back her hood, revealing sharp, calculating eyes. We need to move quickly, she said. The prince's men are closing in. They're already looking for her. The guard didn't hesitate. What's the plan? We have a few hours. Before they realize she's gone, the woman replied. We need to move fast. And we need to gather more intel. We can't let them get the upper hand. Elysia stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly falling into place, but the fear of what might come next was overwhelming. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the battle ahead, but there was no turning back now. The air in the safe house was thick with tension. Elysia could feel it in every corner of the room. From the way the guard and the woman exchanged glances, to the quiet murmur of voices outside, they were all waiting for something. But Elysia wasn't sure what. The uncertainty of their situation was starting to take its toll on her. She had been a princess, surrounded by servants, comfort, and security. But now, she was nothing more than a fugitive, hiding from the very people she had once trusted. She paced back and forth, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the small, dimly lit room. The woman who had arrived earlier, with her sharp eyes and confident posture, was now standing by the window, looking out at the city. The guard, who had been by her side from the beginning, was sitting at the table. His gaze focused on the map in front of him. They were making plans. But Elysia felt detached from it all. She couldn't bring herself to believe it was possible to defeat the prince, not when he held all the power. The guard had promised that they would stop the prince's faction, but Elysia still didn't understand how they could do it. How could they take down the man who had been her husband, the man she had loved? She didn't know if she had the strength to face him, let alone defeat him. The prince was the center of everything. He had control over the palace, over there. People, how could a few strangers hope to challenge that? How do we know they won't find us here? Alicia asked, her voice breaking the silence. How do we know this plan will work? The guard glanced up at her, his face hardening. We're doing everything we can to stay hidden, he said, but we can't guarantee safety. What we can do is be prepared. We've gathered intel. We know where the prince's men are likely to search, and we'll be ready when they come. But what if we're wrong? Alicia pressed. What if the prince's men find us before we're ready? The guard's expression softened, though his eyes remained focused. We can't think like that. If we keep second-guessing ourselves, we'll never get anywhere. You've already taken the first step by trusting us. Now we need to move forward, together. Alicia sighed, feeling the weight of his words. She had always been the one in control, the one making the decisions. But now, she felt like she was at the mercy of others. She wasn't sure how much longer she could keep up the fight. The fear of failure, of being caught, was suffocating. The woman by the window turned to face them. We're running out of time, she said, her voice calm but urgent. We need to move. The prince's men are closing in, and they won't stop until they have her. Alicia turned to the woman, her heart racing. What do you mean? How soon are they coming? The woman's eyes darkened. They've already started searching the lower levels of the city. They're looking for anyone who's close to the princess, anyone who might be helping her. They'll come here next. The guard stood up, his expression grim. We need to leave. Now. Alicia felt a surge of panic rise in her chest. She had never been in a situation like this before. The danger was real now, and she had to make a choice. Could she keep running forever, or was it time to face the truth and take a stand? Where do we go? She asked, her voice trembling. How do we get out of here without being caught? The woman stepped forward, holding up a small device. This will help us get out of the city undetected. It's a cloaking device, one of the few that can fool the prince's sensors. But we have to move quickly. It won't last long, and once it's gone, we'll be exposed. Alicia looked at the device, then at the guard. She had never imagined that it would come to this. The simple life she had known was gone, replaced by a constant struggle for survival. But there was no turning back. She had made her choice, and now she had to trust the people who were helping her. Let's do it, Alicia said, her voice steady for the first time in hours. I'll follow your lead. The guard nodded. Stay close and don't make any noise. We move quickly and we stick together. Understood. Alicia nodded, feeling a surge of determination. This was her fight now, her choice. She wasn't going to hide in fear anymore. She had a purpose, and she would see it through to the end, no matter what. The woman activated the cloaking device, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to blur. The safe house, the city outside, everything disappeared into the haze. Alicia couldn't see where they were going, but she trusted the guard and the woman to lead her. They had a plan, and she was part of it now. As they moved through the streets, Alicia could hear the distant sounds of search parties and the hustle of people trying to carry on with their daily lives, unaware of the danger that was closing in on her. But she wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a person fighting for her future. And she would not be silenced. The group moved through the shadows, careful not to draw attention to themselves. They passed through narrow alleys, avoiding the main roads. Every step was measured, every movement calculated. Alicia's heart raced with the fear of being caught, but she kept moving, kept pushing forward. They reached a small tunnel, hidden beneath the city's streets. The guard looked at her one last time before nodding. This is it. Once we're through here, we'll be out of the city. You'll be safe. Alicia stepped forward, the cold air brushing against her skin. The tunnel was dark, but it was their only way out. As they entered the darkness, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The world above was still out of reach, but she wasn't alone. For the first time in what felt like forever, Alicia was ready to face whatever came next. The tunnel was cold and dark, the air heavy with the scent of damp stone and earth. Elysia's footsteps echoed softly as she walked, her heart still racing from the tension of the past hours. She wasn't sure how much time had passed since they left the safe house, but it felt like days. The guard led the way, his figure a shadow in the dim light. The woman, who had been quiet since they left, walked behind Elysia, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. They had left the city behind, the sounds of the streets now distant. The tunnel stretched on, twisting and turning, but Elysia didn't dare question where they were going. The fear of being found was still fresh in her mind, and each step felt like it brought her closer to safety. At least, that's what she told herself. How much further? Elysia asked, her voice breaking the silence. Her throat felt dry, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Not much, the guard replied, his voice calm but firm. Just a little farther, and we'll be out of the city. From there, we can figure out what to do next. Elysia nodded, though she didn't feel the same confidence. She was grateful for the guard's guidance, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead gnawed at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come, even if they escaped. The prince's men, there were still the traitors within the palace to deal with. They had already made it clear that they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. The woman walked ahead of Elysia, her pace steady, as though she had done this many times before. Elysia couldn't help but wonder who she was and why she had decided to help. She had heard the guard mention allies, but the truth was, Elysia didn't know much about any of them. She trusted the guard, but the rest of the group was a mystery. Who are you? Elysia asked the woman, her voice soft but curious. You seem to know a lot about what's going on. The woman didn't look back immediately, but when she did, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. I've been watching the prince's movements for a while, she said simply. I've seen the changes in him, the way he's been pulled in by those who want to destroy the peace. My job is to make sure people like you don't get caught in the middle. Elysia felt a chill run through her. She hadn't realized that people were watching so closely. The prince's actions had affected far more than just her own life. And you think I can stop them? She asked quietly. You think I'm the key to everything? The woman's expression softened, just slightly. You may not see it yet, but you're more powerful than you know. The prince's plan to kill you was just the first move. If we stop him, if we stop them, others who are pulling the strings, it will change everything. Elysia didn't know what to think of that. She had never seen herself as powerful. But the woman's words planted a seed of hope in her. Maybe she wasn't completely helpless after all. Maybe there was something she could do, something she hadn't realized yet. As they walked deeper into the tunnel, the sounds of the city faded away entirely. The path ahead grew narrower, and Elysia could feel the pressure of the walls closing. And around her, she took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. They were close now, closer than she had ever been to escaping. But there was still a part of her that wasn't sure if it would be enough. Once we're out of the city, the guard said, breaking the silence, we'll need to keep moving. We can't stay in one place for too long. Elysia nodded. She knew. The danger wasn't over. Even if they made it out of the city, they would still be hunted. The prince's men wouldn't stop until they had her in their hands. And the people inside the palace, the ones who wanted to destroy the peace, would be waiting for the right moment to strike. We'll make it, the guard said, as if reading her thoughts. I'm not going to let them get you. Elysia looked at him, her eyes searching for any sign of doubt, but there was none. His confidence was unwavering, and it gave her strength. For the first time since she had learned the truth about the prince, Elysia felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could do this. The tunnel finally opened up into a wide, open space, and the group emerged into the night. The stars above were bright, the air cooler now that they were outside the city's walls. Elysia squinted, trying to adjust to the sudden change in light. This way, the woman said, pointing to a small clearing ahead. We'll rest there for a bit, then head out of the city for good. The guard nodded, and they moved quickly toward the clearing. Elysia followed, her legs tired from the journey. But she didn't care. She was free, at least for now. As they reached the clearing, The woman set down her pack and pulled out a small map, spreading it on the ground. "We need to plan our next move," she said, her voice steady. "The prince's men are still out there, and we can't afford to waste any time." Alicia sat down, her mind still reeling from everything that had happened. The danger wasn't over. In fact, it was only just beginning. But for the first time, she felt ready. She wasn't just a princess hiding in a palace anymore. She was a person who could make a difference. She had the power to change the course of everything. And she wasn't going to let that power slip away. "We'll stop them," she said, her voice stronger now. "We have to. For the future. For everyone." The guard gave her a small, approving nod, and the woman smiled faintly. They had come this far, and they would keep going, together.